Hello. Hello, everybody, and welcome to SDVoE Live. I am your host, Justin Kennington, and this is TV for Pro AV. We're getting into summer, I think. Everyone I talk to complains about the heat already. I remind them that it's only mid-June, and it's going to get warmer before we get cool again. But when we get cool again, when we get past our vacation season, it might finally be time for many of us to start thinking about a return to the office. And what is that going to look like? We've got a very interesting guest, our old friend Adam Cox of Futuresource. He's a principal analyst for collaboration and Pro AV for Futuresource. And he's recently helped to publish a report on what is the office going to look like as we all get back to it towards the end of 2021 and getting into 22. Some very interesting findings from that report, and we're going to chat with Adam about that in just a little bit. Before we do that, I'm going to talk over some news related to the return to the office and what that will be with my co-host Matt Dodd. But before we get to Matt, I want to remind you all about the after show, which is coming up at the end of our half-hour program. If you're watching us live in the SDVoE Academy, all you have to do is stay right where you are. Don't move a muscle, don't push a button, and you'll enjoy the after show, which is your chance to use the chat function right below, or find us on Twitter at hashtag SDVoE Live to get your questions, your comments into us as we host the show, so that you can ask me, ask Matt, ask Adam what's on your mind, and also give us a chance to tell you what you think. So without further ado, let's bring in Matt and check out the news.
Let's face it.
I see you're suffering from hybrid working condition.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, and this is the face. Hold on. This is the face of the new office environment. Is this the face of the new office environment? Let me take this off. Is that the face?
That would be best.
Is that the face of the new office environment? We ask ourselves. I feel like I should have done that really, because all the time we've been coming into SDVoE House, this real building that we're coming to you from. You know, we've never worn a face mask. We've never adhered to global policy, and that makes me feel quite bad. How does it make you feel?
I disagree, Matt. I disagree. I think we have strictly adhered to policy of maintaining at least 6 feet or 2 meters of social distance between us. That's why we never cross this boundary at the center of the screen in this very real facility that we own.
Shall we? Shall we try and cross the boundary?
I not without your mask on.
Well, that's true. Well, I'm not going to wear the mask. How are you anyway? You well?
Good. We're starting to enjoy ourselves, I think.
Yeah, it's stinking hot here. Absolutely stinking hot. I'm sure you've got the same thing. But over here in this side of the SDVoE house, which is the UK, yeah, we're really hot. Hello to everybody out there as well. Thank you for joining us once again to this, the SDVoE Live. Show 15. God, they're flying by. They're flying by. So I'm going to throw that over there. You've thrown some great news articles up. Shall we look at the first one? Let's take a look at the first news article. The verticals which drive recovery in commercial audio. Tricky, it's an interesting piece, this. I'm going to let you go first here. So what did you get from this?
I think, the piece was about the commercial audio space, but I think it can be applied more broadly to all of audio video. When they talked about where are the vertical segments that are expected to recover the most quickly, that are expected to recover the least quickly, there weren't any big surprises there. In other words, all the findings sort of made sense. The corporate space is one that continues to do well. The article mentioned there were project delays at the beginning of the pandemic, and understandably so, as everyone's figuring out what in the world is going on here. But now these corporations are working to adapt their office space into this new environment. And again, we'll talk with Adam about some of the details of what that might look like. But of course, that means more spending, more projects, and more emphasis on upgrades, on changes to the AV systems that support these offices. What about you, Matt? What did you think?
Well, do you know, I started reading this with I kind of had I'm not really convinced frame of mind. I don't want to challenge the article, but when it opens up with COVID-19 through a shockwave across the whole of the world, well, it did, and we know this, and I think we've been very careful not to refer to the elephant in the room an awful lot throughout these shows, You're right with everything you've just said. I think that I had an eyebrow raise, if that's fair to say, when budgets have already been assigned to equipping AV space within these arenas, and I fear a little bit that please don't hang on that being a positive thing. Budgets certainly in government space are always assigned at the beginning of the year. For whatever reason it might be, whether it be building a new road or equipping office space. It's interesting that certainly office space management are very heavily focusing on how they're going to do it, how they're going to spend that budget. But it's going to be very interesting to see what happens next year, once we've lived that first year of people coming back to the office space. What I'm pleased to see it doing is focusing on the hybrid working space, but some of the places that it talked about, some of the verticals of hospitality. I know that in the toing and froing of lockdown and ease of lockdown, certainly over in the UK, there's been a lot of sudden. People have really thought about this. Bar owners, hospitality people, people who are used to floods of people coming into the bar and ordering drinks and sitting outside. The whole bar, the whole internal element of that business has had to shift itself outside. And that's good, for AV space, because now we're seeing, much better AV systems, much better digital signage, much better outdoor spaces, which is naturally going to continue, post-pandemic and further beyond that. There's always going to be a requirement for really well-utilised outside space, which, to be fair, in my experience, I think bars have focused too heavily on the inside and not really thought about what happens when people go outside. So from that perspective, it was very good. I suppose I just had a raised eyebrow, Justin, really on it. I'm hoping that people don't just expect, there's money there to equip outside spaces now post-pandemic. We'll be fine in the future. We really have to wait and see. What do you think?
Well, fair enough. And the article's point about budgets was really specific to the government sector, right? And here in the States, and I imagine elsewhere, economic stimulus is the name of the game. I could almost wonder if we could see an AV infrastructure package coming from Congress one day soon. $2 trillion of AV spending. Why not? Go for it.
That'd be good. And then maybe we get a new carpet.
A final point that I thought was interesting in the article, it talked about the retail sector. And how the retail sector weathered the storm of the pandemic relatively well by just shifting to online sales, which of course, took off in the past year and a half. So they've still got cash flow and still a healthy business. Their next challenge is how to draw people back into the stores, how to get that foot traffic back. And the report here cited AV systems as a way to create, interesting and unique experiences that might draw people back. So if you're an integrator near the retail space, watch for those opportunities.
And that's good as well, of course, because Amazon have been a big threat to people who are selling in the retail space. Lots of people are selling in the retail space who don't have this return to work thought behind them. They don't rely on multiple different spaces to sell stuff to. So I can imagine how difficult it must be for a business to have to then jump in the world of retail to sell amongst many other people who are doing so, but with a different model. Interesting topic. Let's move to the next. Let's see what we've got next. The biotech sector is gobbling up real estate. Is it? Well, I think the biggest takeaway from me here was that whilst we're working very hard to allow people to work from home, and we'll talk about that more in the next news section, but you can't really do biotech work from home. if you've got a lab, you can't really take the lab.
It depends on This depends on what kind of home you have. I'm sure Tony Stark has a biosecure lab 4 in the basement somewhere, but it's true that not everyone does. So here's, I brought this article in sort of speaking of verticals that are doing well. Here you have an industry that demands in-person effort, and is buoyed by a sudden increase in interest in vaccines and in the technology that this industry produces. So you see this massive growth in this space. The article talked about for the AV sector, for the integrator, the installer, the IT professional, right? These are companies that need things like access control, like security, conferencing systems, a big focus on cybersecurity. So if you have expertise in those areas, or if you want to brush up in those areas, here's a segment that you can target to drive your business in the next year or two.
It'd be good to get a biotech representative, a biotech guest onto the SDVoE show. There's a bit of homework for you. Anybody out there in biotech?
Okay, let's do it.
Come along. Let's move from the biotech, from not being able to work from home, to your final piece of news, which talks about when working from home shouldn't be, horrible working from home, not hurt from home. When work from home should not be hurt from home. That's good, that. This is great. I mean, we could talk for ages about this, but it really has elevated and suddenly brought to the attention the fact that companies have got to focus on looking after their employees in the work from home environment. No more are we going to get people, managers and owners of companies saying, you will not work from home because I can't keep my eye on you. It's going to reduce the micromanagement factor. It's going to really help to support people using valuable space at home to be more efficient. That was the biggest takeaway from me here. Hybrid is going to be cool. What about you?
That was it. And you know what? I want to remind everyone you can read all these articles by clicking below in the resource section. What I took from this one quickly, and then let's get to our guest, is that the average office worker moves his or her mouse 100 feet per day. That's almost 6 miles a year of mouse movement.
Wow.
So watch those ergonomics.
Stay tuned for the endless font of useless knowledge, which is Justin Kennington. Let's bring in our guest, Adam Cox, great guy, and he's a fellow Brit. Are you there, Adam?
I am. How are you doing, guys?
Very well. How are you? Thanks for joining us.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
You're more than welcome, of course.
Adam, thanks for joining us. Tell us in just a brief few words, tell us a little bit about Futuresource for those in our audience who don't know what Futuresource does.
Yeah, sure. So Futuresource is, essentially we're market analysts. We're an agency or a research agency, and we focus on a wide variety of different markets and technologies, ranging from the pure AV space, the broadcast space, but into the consumer electronics and the distribution of digital content as well. So quite a wide-ranging area. But my focus is very much on the collaboration and pro video space, and in particular collaboration at the moment. It's an interesting time to be in that world.
Sure it is. And I've read some of your recent report on the return to the office, on how things might look over the coming year or two. One of the things that jumped out at me in your report, and you can tell me if it surprised you as well, is that you talked about the number of people who worked from home full-time before the pandemic, and then in comparing that to the number of people expected to work from home full-time after the pandemic, your report said that those numbers will actually be about the same. We won't have more people working from home full-time. That surprised me. Did it surprise you?
No, absolutely.
Or did it not? How did we get there?
No, it did, absolutely. So just to put some numbers to that, we did this survey speaking to people in the US, UK, France, Germany, and all the respondents worked at home at some point during the lockdown. This was done around the turn of the new year, and what we saw was 18% of people pre-COVID were working from home full time, and that actually dropped to 16% in terms of expectations post-COVID. Now, I think what's really clear is it's not that people are going to go back to the office. It's actually because it's people who want to go to this more hybrid working model, where they actually want to be in the office some of the time and working from home some of the time. What was actually really interesting as well is that the peak of working from home 5 days a week during lockdown was only 35% of respondents. So hybrid working we can talk about it as a trend that's emerging, but actually it's a trend that's here now. There are benefits to working from home. The obvious, the kind of home life, work-life balance. The lack of a commute, obviously, is a big one. But then obviously being in the office is really important as well. Actually seeing your colleagues, having a work culture, having those sort of spontaneous creative moments that you just don't really have over Zoom or Teams or what have you. So yeah, I think people have realized that actually a compromise is probably the best where possible. And so going to the office and working from home throughout the week is what a lot of people are choosing to do.
I have the feeling I don't have the I haven't done the survey, but I have the feeling that before the pandemic, we all sort of clearly understood the benefits of working from home, right? Many people didn't
Mm,
do it, but many people maybe wished they could, right? More time with the family, less time
mm.
commuting, all those things. I think what's happened in the last year is we've started to focus and really understand, I think for maybe the first time, the benefits of being in the office. Those things you mentioned, right? The spontaneous collaboration, just the friendships
Absolutely.
and the engagement with your work that brings. I think maybe was hidden and taken for granted before this.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think that there's a big caveat to this is of course culture. We did this research looking at those four countries, and even within that sample, the US was way out in front of people working from home and the acceptance around that, followed by the UK, and then France and Germany were quite a way behind. If you extrapolate that out to the whole world, what anecdotally what we're hearing is that when you go out to the Far East, when you're looking at China and Japan, there just isn't the same working from home culture or the acceptance of that. Now, part of that is because
Mhm.
those countries certainly at the beginning dealt with COVID a lot better than perhaps the US and Europe did, and so they weren't forced into that. But more than that, there is a cultural expectation of people being in the office, and that's simply a trusting. Matt, you mentioned the micromanagement aspects earlier on. That's exactly what those cultures, out in that direction in the world, they haven't got over that part, or haven't adopted the sort of more you could argue more progressive working from home hybrid working models that we have in the West. So even within Europe, there are huge differences. But looking globally, it's very difficult to make a generalization about how things are going. Overall, I would say there is a move to hybrid working, and what we're seeing in the research is not a revolution. It is very much an evolution, a continuing trend of adoption of that hybrid working model.
So with the idea that hybrid work becomes more prevalent, becomes maybe the most commonplace working structure, what are the adjustments to the office itself, right? What do the employers need to be doing? What are they doing to start making the workplace better supportive of that?
That's a good question. I mean, basically, it comes down to how people are going to meet. So historically, a meeting room within an office was what was the hub of a meeting. You would have most people in that meeting room. You may be dialing in one or two people who are working remotely. You may be calling another meeting room, but within your organization, that meeting room was the hub. Well, now where your employees are is going to vary day by day, potentially, as people are in the office and have staggered working routines. So a meeting room, therefore, has to reflect that changing nature of work. It needs to be not just suitable in terms of technology for people in the office, but also outside the office. And those needs need to be treated completely equally as well. So we're going to see, and we are seeing, a significant investment in meeting room technology, particularly around video conferencing, to allow that flexibility to take place.
So I feel like I have some kind of obvious guesses for what those technologies might be, but still, I want to hear it from you. What are the technology trends that are going to be driving the next couple of years? Right? What is our audience going to be asked to install?
Well, again, another good question, and really, like the previous question, there's no one answer to that because you have different size organizations, you have different verticals, but by and large, obviously, it's video conferencing is at the center, and collaboration is at the center of investment. Now, that may be in room screen sharing that can then be mirrored outside of the office with remote workers. It could be as simple as having a webcam or a PTZ camera based in the room, or it could be a full-blown room kit, with a room hub at the center of it, and satellite speakers and microphones around that as well. It really depends on the budget, and it depends on the vertical, as I say. So you'll have some organizations that want to go for a more secure option, and they're not very happy with cloud-based solutions. They want to go more traditional, more about having integrated codec. And then you have some people who are happy with Teams and Zoom and the like, and will as I say, adopt those kind of low cost products such as PTZ cameras and video bars, collaboration bars as well.
It strikes me, and we're getting outside of my expertise, so if I go wild, let me know. But it strikes me that solutions like Zoom and Teams, which you just categorized under cloud-based there, are much more accessible to the easy work from home setup, right? I've got a home office here. I just dial into my Zoom account and I'm there. When you're talking about the more traditional approach, I'm thinking of dedicated hardware codecs and things. How do we make that work in a hybrid environment? How do I access that from home?
Well, a lot of the integrated codec solutions are now featuring interoperability with the various different cloud platforms. Although obviously that does compromise security in many cases. So that they are opening up to that. But generally, what we're seeing that the largest take up is around Zoom and Teams. If you look at the standardization of the room hubs, for example, is very much around those two platforms. There are obviously others as well, but those two really do stand out. So I think the mass adoption that we've seen over the past 18 months has only been possible because of the cloud conferencing platforms that are out there. I mean, for a while, and probably still remains so, Zoom became a household name and a verb. I'm going to go and Zoom somebody. People knew exactly what that meant. Now the kind of novelty has worn off a little bit, certainly within the consumer world. Perhaps that's no longer as true as it was, but you're absolutely right. The accessibility is absolutely key to those solutions.
What I've observed personally is, here I live in the world of professional audio video, right? All of my colleagues, anyone that I'm interacting with professionally, you can assume a very high base level knowledge and understanding of how to use these platforms. But as we've been shoved into this use of Zoom personally, right, I've started to observe the vast difference in some people's understanding of the platform, right? And when I'm dealing with some, I'm trying not to name any names or call any of my friends or family or out here, but people who don't live in technology, right? And now suddenly have to do their job on Zoom. That's been a massive challenge, and I imagine they must welcome back the in-office experience.
Yeah, well, I think you have different grades of experience and knowledge. I think not for everybody, that's incorrect. For a lot of people, video conferencing was a new phenomenon, 18 months ago or so, and there was a huge learning curve. And still, it's really interesting culturally seeing how people are still working with that. I mean, the little kind of the tentative wave at the end of calls. We've still not worked out how to give a proper sort of goodbye at the end of calls, which is still fascinating. The fact that a lot of people don't want to be on video because they don't want their homes shown that behind them. They don't want that intrusion into their own personal lives. There are lots of different aspects to that, as well as the technical side of things. I think yes, there are still people who are struggling with the technology. It's more, I think, being familiar with the platforms themselves rather than technology per se. I would suggest. So, like trying to find where the leave button is or the share screen button. People often fall foul of that.
Right. Yeah, you could certainly learn how to use Zoom and then get invited to a Teams meeting and just what do I do? Where do I click?
Yeah, exactly. And you'll figure it out. It's not rocket science, but it's there is still that a little bit of a barrier. And the point about this technology is it needs to be invisible, particularly when people go back to the office, because before lockdown, before COVID, comparatively few people, you were using video calls, and all of a sudden it was forced on them, and lots of people are still not comfortable with that. So when people go back to the office, there's a question mark over what is going to be used. Are people still going to be using video conferencing now? They don't strictly have to. Now, we very firmly believe that people are still going to use this technology because it is, if people are working from home, it is the next best thing to having somebody next to you in the office, is actually sort of being able to see them.
And Adam,
I think this,
let me pause you right there and call you back for the after show in a couple of minutes. I want to hear what the audience thinks about how popular will this technology remain after maybe we don't need it. So hang on, and we'll be back with you in just a couple of minutes.
No problem at all.
That was a really good interview. It was. You felt you guys could have just carried on chatting to him for ages.
That's what I was going to say. I had this list of 6 things I wanted to ask about, and we basically got to 2 because we had such a good topic about those 2. So yeah. Maybe we'll have part 2 of this episode at the end of the summer. Absolutely.
Well, look, get your questions in, guys. We've got Adam coming back into us with the after show. For those of you here in Academy, wouldn't it be great to verb it, to make SDVoE the verb? So when people go and Zoom, let's go and Zoom this. You need to SDVoE this. That's going to be fab. Stay tuned, people. That will happen. So we asked you a couple of questions throughout the show. So get your answers in, and we'll review those in the after show. We've had a few people coming back to us already, but please do get your questions in for Adam and for us at the after show. Get them in now. What are you waiting for? Do it right now. JK, please. There it is. Just some quick house rules, some housekeeping. Prepare these people.
Look, if you're watching us in SDVoE Academy, thank you so much for that. The after show is available to you. If you're live, just keep watching. If you're watching on demand, just click the link at the bottom to get to the after show. If you're watching us on YouTube, either live or on demand, you will have to come to the Academy to join us for the after show. So look in the comments for the link that will get you here. Your free login will make it all accessible to you. And if you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to click that subscribe button, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode of this show.
And I do believe I've introduced somebody new to our audience, so I'll tell you about him later. But Ben, if you're out there, great to see you. Thanks for joining us. What's happening next time? Episode 16. God, the time flies.
Yeah, we're past. We didn't have a half birthday celebration for the show. Maybe we should have, but
we'll run out of money.
We can start planning the 1 year soon.
Yeah.
In 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about the state of control in the industry today, right? Many of us have been around this industry long enough to remember when a control processor had 12 infrared ports hanging out the back of it, and looking up your little infrared code databases was the way that you did things. That is not the world we live in anymore, right? It's software, it's APIs, it's coding in a way that's much more congruent with how the rest of the world writes code. So what does that mean for us? We're going to find out with our guest Lincoln King-Kleiby in 2 weeks.
And Lincoln's been busy on our chat, so we're going to find out what he's had to say in the after show. Stick around, those of you in Academy. Those who aren't, get yourself an Academy. You go and get yourself ready. We'll see you in a minute.